know what's strange? Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who cared the deepest, but they'll never admit it. They'll walk away with a blank face, an emotionless stare, and that deadly silence that makes you think, wow, I meant nothing to them. But deep inside their chest, behind that calm, that coldness, that silence, something else is happening, something they'll never let you see. Avoidants don't show pain the way others do. They don't break down in front of you. They don't cry or apologize the next day. No, they vanish. They pull back, disappear into their own walls, and convince themselves it's better that way. But the truth is their silence isn't peace. It's punishment. Not for you, for them. Because what they secretly feel after hurting someone, especially someone who touched them deeply, is chaos. A quiet kind of chaos that eats away slowly. You can't see it. You can't hear it, but it's there. Under every long pause, under every late night scroll through your old photos, under every I don't care they whisper to themselves just to numb what's real. They thought leaving would give them control. They thought shutting down would protect them. But the moment they hurt you, something inside them cracked too. See, they didn't just push you away, they pushed away the one thing that made them feel safe enough to love. And that realization doesn't hit right away. It creeps in slowly, like a shadow they can't escape. At first they look unbothered, detached, cold. They'll convince themselves they did what they had to do. But behind that logic, behind those walls, there's a storm brewing, a storm of guilt, confusion, and unspoken emotion they don't have the tools to deal with. This video isn't about blaming them. It's about revealing what they'll never tell you, what avoidants secretly feel after they've hurt someone they actually cared about. When an avoidant hurts you, their first instinct isn't guilt, it's escape. They need distance, silence, control, because feelings to them are like fire, beautiful but dangerous. And if they let themselves stand too close, they're terrified they'll get burned. So they do what they've always done. They pull away, they armor up, they look you in the eye and act like your tears, your pain, your confusion mean nothing. You'll see them go out, post online, laugh with friends, maybe even look happier without you, and you'll think, wow, I was replaced that easily. But here's the truth, that version of them you see, the one who looks calm and composed, that's not who they really are. That's their shield. Avoidants survive through suppression. They don't process emotion, they pack it down, bury it, and tell themselves, I'm fine, because feeling too much threatens their sense of control, and losing control terrifies them more than losing you. Deep inside, though, their body knows the truth before their mind does. Their chest feels heavier, their sleep starts breaking, their energy shifts, they can't focus, they get irritated for no reason. They tell themselves they're over it, but that numbness they're clinging to, it's not peace, it's overload. Their emotions are so strong, they can't even touch them. That's why they look indifferent. It's not because they don't care, it's because they care too much to handle it properly. So they pretend, they hide behind logic, behind routines, behind meaningless distractions. They scroll through social media to feel normal. They'll tell people it just didn't work out, as if your connection was a simple choice on a checklist. But late at night, when the noise dies down, they feel it, the emptiness, the tightness, the quiet ache that comes from pretending something sacred never existed. You see, for an avoidant, detachment isn't strength, it's survival. It's how they learn to feel safe when love once felt unsafe. Maybe in their past, every time they reached out for comfort, they were met with rejection, judgment, or shame. So they built walls, not to destroy love, but to keep themselves from being destroyed by it. So when they hurt you, when they say things they don't mean or walk away without explanation, that's not power. That's fear in disguise. They're not running from you. They're running from themselves, from the part of them that still wants closeness but can't bear the thought of being abandoned again. And the irony, the very distance they create to protect themselves is the thing that ends up breaking them. Because once the silence sets in, they realize how much of their identity was tied to being loved by you, to being seen by someone who didn't demand perfection, who saw their softness under the armor. And when that disappears, it leaves a void too deep to ignore. But rather than facing that pain, they double down. They put on the same mask, calm, detached, maybe even smug, as if they're winning some invisible battle. But that win comes with a cost. Because every time they avoid emotion, they also avoid connection. Every time they suppress guilt, they bury love a little deeper. Every time they act fine, They drift further from their truth. And you, the one who loved them, you become both their comfort and their trigger. Your memory brings warmth and guilt in equal measure. They can't look at your pictures for too long because it reminds them of what they lost. They can't hear your voice because it brings back the version of themselves they can't face. The one who wanted to stay but didn't know how. Avoidants carry a secret. They don't actually feel nothing. They feel too much, just all at once and all alone. And when that emotional flood rises, instead of facing it, they drown in silence.
You might think they've moved on.
You might think your absence means nothing. But the truth is, every time they block out the memory of you, a part of them feels emptier. Every time they act cold, a part of them feels smaller. And eventually that detachment starts to turn on them. They start realizing they're not escaping the pain. They're living in it quietly, constantly. Because detachment isn't healing, it's hiding. And no matter how well they pretend, the body remembers, the mind remembers, the heart remembers. So yes, they look unbothered now. They post motivational quotes, hang out with new people, laugh at jokes that don't really land. But deep inside, they're still hearing echoes of your voice, the calm in the chaos, the one person who didn't demand they change just to be loved. Avoidants live in contradiction. They crave connection, but fear it. They want love, but run from it. They hurt you, then punish themselves by pretending it never mattered. But underneath it all, behind that illusion of detachment, lies a truth they'll never say out loud. They didn't walk away because they stopped caring. They walked away because caring scared them. Because in you, they saw something they weren't ready for, a reflection of what they wanted most, but believed they didn't deserve. And no matter how far they go, no matter how long they hide behind that wall of silence, a part of them will always feel the weight of that loss. Because deep down, they know you were real. You were genuine, and they hurt the one person who saw through their armor and loved them anyway. At first, it's quiet, too quiet. The avoidant tells themselves they're fine, maybe even relieved. No more intense conversations, no more emotional pressure, no more feeling like they're standing in front of a mirror that shows them everything they've been trying to avoid. For a while, that silence feels safe, predictable, but safety and emptiness aren't the same thing. And soon that silence starts to echo. It starts small, something as harmless as a memory triggered by a song, a scent, or a small phrase someone else says, something that reminds them of you. It stings for a second, but they shake it off. They tell themselves it's just a memory, but it's not. It's the past knocking at the walls they thought were unbreakable. It's the reminder that they didn't just walk away from you, they walked away from something real. And real has a way of haunting them in the quiet moments. When the world slows down, that's when it hits. The moments between work and sleep. The drives where the mind has nowhere to run. The silence of a room where they used to feel your voice. Suddenly their peace feels off. The things that used to distract them, the gym, their phone, their routines, don't hit the same anymore. It's like the air feels heavier, the colors dimmer. They'll try to push it away, but regret doesn't ask for permission. It creeps in quietly and stays. They start replaying moments in their mind. The last argument, the look on your face when they pulled away, the words they said to protect themselves, but that sliced through you like a knife. And for the first time, they can't convince themselves it was the right thing. They begin to feel the weight of every unspoken word, every time they could have reached out but didn't. They wonder what would have happened if they'd stayed just 5 minutes longer, if they'd allowed themselves to soften just once. But pride steps in quickly, whispering, it's too late now. So they swallow that feeling and pretend again. Avoidants often mistake regret for irritation. They'll get restless, agitated, snappy. Their mind tells them they're annoyed with life. But what they're really fighting is guilt. Guilt for hurting someone who didn't deserve it. Guilt for breaking something that was real. They start avoiding places, people, even music that remind them of you. Because deep down they know that facing those reminders means facing themselves. And that's what they fear the most. The mirror that shows them what they ran from wasn't you, but their own unhealed pain. In their silence, they start to question things they never did before. Was it really the other person who made them feel trapped? Or was it their own fear of closeness, their own inability to trust love? These thoughts come at night when they're most vulnerable. They'll lie awake, scrolling aimlessly, trying to drown out the noise in their head. But no matter how many distractions they chase, the ache finds them, because the truth is they miss you. Not in a dramatic movie-style way, but in the small, quiet details. The way your presence softened their days. The way your laughter brought calm. The way you didn't demand perfection. Just honesty. They remember, but they can't reach for it. Because reaching means admitting they care. And caring means opening a door they've spent their whole life trying to keep closed. So instead, they live in a strange tension, missing you deeply while doing everything possible not to show it. They convince themselves you've moved on, that you're happier now and it's better this way. They say it over and over, hoping one day it'll feel true. But it doesn't, because no matter how far they run, their mind keeps replaying what they lost. They'll see someone who reminds them of you and feel that pang of nostalgia that hits like lightning, a mixture of longing and shame. They'll think of reaching out, maybe even type a message. But fear freezes them. What if you don't reply? What if you do? What if they open that door and have to feel everything they've been avoiding? So they delete the message again and tell themselves it's for the best. But what they don't realize is that every time they stop themselves from feeling, they break their own heart a little more. It's strange how the mind works. The more they try not to think of you, the more you show up in unexpected ways, a scent in the air, a phrase someone else says that sounds like yours. The same song that once played while you were together in the car. It's like the universe keeps reminding them that what they pushed away wasn't a mistake. It was a connection they weren't ready for. And that realization burns quietly inside them. Because no matter how much they justify what they did, they can't shake the sense that they lost something irreplaceable, something real, something that might never come again. The guilt becomes its own kind of prison. They'll laugh, but it feels hollow. They'll smile, but the eyes betray them. They'll keep busy, but inside there's a weight that doesn't move. It's not about wanting to go back. It's about wishing they hadn't left that way. Wishing they had the courage to explain, or to stay, or to say it wasn't you, I just didn't know how to be loved. What vulnerability has never been their language. So they bury that confession under layers of distraction. Yet even buried feelings grow roots. What hurts them most isn't losing you, it's realizing they hurt someone who only ever wanted to understand them. And as much as they try to act strong, that thought lingers like a ghost. They might tell themselves they're over it, but deep inside, a part of them knows they messed up something rare. They didn't just lose a person, they lost the one who saw them when no one else did. The one who looked past the walls and reached for the soul behind the silence. And once someone experiences that kind of connection, nothing else feels the same. Time passes, and for a while they think they're doing fine. But as the days turn into weeks and weeks into months, the emptiness starts to grow louder. The silence they once craved now feels suffocating. They start to realize that what they called peace was actually avoidance, a way of running from the noise inside them. And when there's no one left to blame, when the distractions fade, they're left with themselves. That's when it hits hardest. The realization that their escape didn't save them, it isolated them. That their walls didn't protect them, they trapped them. They'll try to fill that emptiness, maybe with work, maybe with new people, maybe with constant motion, but nothing sticks. Because connection isn't something you can replace. It's something you either show up for or lose forever. And slowly they start to understand that the pain they caused wasn't just yours, it's theirs too. Every cold goodbye, every defensive word, every silent treatment, it's a reflection of their own fear mirrored back at them, and that's a hard truth to face. Deep down, they start to see what they couldn't before, that love doesn't disappear just because you run from it. It lingers. It follows you in the quiet. It shows up when you least expect it, in dreams, in songs, in flashes of memory that hit out of nowhere. They start to realize that their avoidance didn't make them strong, it made them lonely, and that maybe, just maybe, the person they pushed away wasn't trying to control them, they were trying to reach them. There's a moment that happens for every avoidant, that breaking point when their silence becomes too heavy to carry, when the calm turns into anxiety, and the distance starts to hurt more than the closeness ever did. That's when they finally understand that they didn't escape pain, they just delayed it. Because you can't run from something that's inside you, you can only face it. And that's where the real shift happens. Slowly they begin to feel again. Maybe they'll reach out, maybe they won't. But even if they don't, something inside them changes. They start to see how their own patterns have cost them peace. how fear disguised itself as pride, how control disguised itself as self-protection. And for the first time, they feel the weight of it all, the pain of the loss, the regret of the silence, the understanding that love, real love, doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence. They'll think of you then not as a mistake, but as a mirror. Someone who showed them what love could look like if only they'd let it in. Someone who challenged their fear without even trying. And in that quiet reflection, they'll realize that what they ran from wasn't danger, it was healing. Because love like that doesn't come often. And when it does, it changes you, whether you admit it or not. That's the secret no one tells you. Avoidants they feel deeply, silently, and long after they've gone. Their hearts don't move on as quickly as their actions suggest. They just bury their emotions so deep that it takes time, sometimes years, for them to surface. But when they do, the regret is heavy, because by the time they're ready to face it, the moment has usually passed. The person they pushed away has learned to stop waiting. And that's when they realize that running didn't protect them from pain. It ensured it. They may never say it out loud, but somewhere deep down, they know. They know they hurt someone who only ever wanted to understand them. They know they lost something pure. And that truth lingers quietly, hidden behind smiles and distractions, haunting them in the spaces between thoughts. Because no matter how strong the walls they build, love has a way of finding cracks. And when it does, it doesn't just remind them of what they lost, it reminds them of who they could have been if they just let themselves feel. Time passes, but the ache never truly fades. It just hides behind distractions, behind laughter that doesn't reach the heart, behind a calm voice that trembles when no one's listening. They thought distance would make them forget, but all it did was give their mind more space to remember. Every day feels like an echo chamber of what once was, the memories growing louder when the world goes quiet. They start to feel it during the little things, a familiar song that plays while they're driving, a restaurant they used to go to, a piece of clothing that somehow still smells like your presence. It's strange. The things that used to make them feel free now only remind them of everything missing. They look around and realize that the silence they once craved is now unbearable. It's like the very air has weight, pressing down with the reminder that they didn't just lose someone, they lost their safe place. The longer they go pretending they don't care, the heavier it gets. The mask they wear starts to crack in small, quiet ways. They find themselves zoning out more often, caught in memories they can't stop replaying. They'll imagine what it would feel like to reach out, to say, "I'm sorry," but pride stops them every time. Pride is their armor, but it's also their prison. And when you live behind armor for too long, even breathing starts to feel like a fight. There comes a moment when even avoidance stops working. The things they used to use as distractions, work, routines, other people begin to lose their power. They might look composed on the outside, but inside something's breaking. The emotional numbness that once protected them starts to fade, and beneath it lies a loneliness so deep it scares them. They realize they're surrounded by people, yet still feel completely alone, because no one else made them feel the way you did, understood without words, seen without judgment. That realization cuts deeper than any argument or goodbye ever could, because now they can't blame anyone else. They can't point to your flaws or the situation. The silence exposes everything. The truth that they weren't running from you, they were running from the parts of themselves they didn't know how to face. And when that truth hits, it hits hard. It's like looking into a mirror and finally seeing the damage they caused, not just to others, but to themselves. Regret has a way of teaching in whispers. It doesn't shout. It doesn't punish loudly. It just sits there quietly, reminding them of what they could have had. They'll find themselves staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., thinking about the moments they took for granted, the laughter, the comfort, the simplicity of being known. It's no longer about missing the relationship. It's about missing the version of themselves they were when they were with you. Softer, calmer, more human. And that's the cruel twist. Avoidants don't realize the value of connection until it's gone. Because for them, love feels safest from a distance. But once that distance becomes real, the emptiness shows them that what they thought was safety was actually self-sabotage. They start to understand that they didn't protect their heart, they starved it, they didn't save themselves from pain, they just delayed it. And now it's all coming back, heavier, sharper, more real than ever. Now, so today it might come suddenly or creep up slowly when the avoidance shatters completely. Maybe it's triggered by seeing you again, maybe by a small memory, or maybe just by the realization that time has passed and you're no longer there. It's that moment when they realize they can't go back, and that realization burns because they thought they could always return once they were ready. But people don't wait forever. Love doesn't pause, and when they finally understand that, the regret transforms into grief. They start to grieve something that's still alive, the version of the story that could have been. They replay what they'd say if they had another chance, how they'd do things differently, how they'd finally stay. They imagine knocking on your door, hearing your voice again, feeling that familiar warmth. But imagination is cruel. It gives them glimpses of what's gone, but never lets them touch it. So they carry that grief in silence. They smile when they see you moving on, but deep inside it twists like a knife. Because for the first time, they realize what it means to be replaced, not out of revenge, but out of healing. They see you becoming lighter, freer, maybe even happier, and it hurts. Not because they want to stop you, but because they know they had that chance once and they let it slip. That's when the transformation begins, not dramatic or sudden, but slow and quiet. The pain forces them to confront their patterns. They start questioning the walls they built, wondering why love feels like a battlefield when it should feel like home. They start seeing that every escape left a trail of loneliness behind. And for the first time, they stop running. Not because they're ready to love again, but because they're tired of hiding from it. They begin to understand that love was never the enemy. That closeness wasn't danger. It was medicine. The problem wasn't being loved. It was believing they weren't worthy of it. And that realization breaks something open inside them. It's uncomfortable, even painful, because facing the truth means admitting that all the times they said they didn't care, they lied. All the times they said they needed space, what they really needed was healing. Healing for an avoidant doesn't look like grand apologies or dramatic reunions. It starts quietly in moments of self-awareness, in recognizing how fear disguised itself as independence, how silence disguised itself as strength, how running away disguised itself as freedom, and in that awareness, something begins to shift. They start to soften, not for someone else, but for themselves, because you can't connect deeply with anyone until you stop hiding from your own heart. As they process this, they start to feel the weight of every moment they could have chosen differently. Every time they could have stayed and didn't. Every time they could have spoken honestly instead of shutting down. It's not just guilt, it's awakening. They start to see how love isn't about control, it's about presence. How being known by someone isn't a threat, it's a privilege. And that's when the lesson finally lands. They realize that love doesn't disappear when it's rejected. It echoes, it lingers in the corners of the mind, in the rhythm of memory, reminding them of what's possible. It doesn't punish, it teaches. Every person they meet after you will remind them of what they lost. Not because others aren't enough, but because you showed them a version of connection they didn't believe could exist. Sometimes they'll talk about it like it was no big deal, trying to seem detached, but late at night, that illusion fades because deep down they know what they had was rare, the kind of bond that doesn't fade easily, the kind that changes you from the inside. They may never reach out, may never say the words, but the truth sits quietly in their chest. They felt everything, every emotion they denied, every ounce of care they tried to bury. They felt it all, just too late. Eventually, they start to grow. The pain becomes their teacher. They start reading more, reflecting more, talking less. They begin to understand that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. They start to see how healing doesn't come from silence, but from honesty. And somewhere along the way, they start forgiving themselves. Not because what they did was okay, but because holding on to guilt doesn't rebuild what was lost. Only growth does. They might never tell you this, but you changed them, not by staying, but by leaving. Not by forgiving them directly, but by forcing them to sit with what they ran from. You became their wake-up call. You became the mirror they couldn't look away from. And that reflection, as painful as it is, becomes the start of their transformation. Years might pass, and they'll still think of you from time to time. Not with the same make, but with quiet gratitude. Because even though the relationship ended, its impact didn't. You showed them what real love looked like. You showed them that connection isn't something to fear, it's something to cherish. You showed them that walls might keep pain out, but they also keep love from getting in. And that's the secret ending they'll never say out loud. You healed something in them, even through the heartbreak. You left an imprint on their soul that taught them what closeness means, what vulnerability feels like, and what loss teaches when we stop running. You didn't just change their view of love, you changed their capacity to feel it. So if you've ever wondered whether they secretly felt something after hurting you, yes, they did, more than you'll ever know. They felt it slowly, deeply, and silently. And that silence, it wasn't indifference. It was the sound of someone breaking open in ways they didn't understand. Because love doesn't vanish when it's denied, it transforms. And sometimes the one who seems the most distant ends up carrying the heaviest heart.
Maybe they'll never say it. Maybe they'll never come back. But deep inside, they know the love you gave wasn't wasted. It became the voice that still whispers through their silence. It became the light that guided them through the darkness they built themselves. And though they may walk a different path now, a piece of that love will always live inside them, reminding them of what was lost, what was learned, and what it truly means to feel. Because sometimes the most powerful transformations happen not when we find new love, but when the memory of the old one teaches us how to finally stop running. You know, it's strange how love works. We think it ends when someone leaves, when they walk away, or when the messages stop coming. But truthfully, love doesn't end. It just changes form. It becomes memory. It becomes lesson. It becomes growth. Maybe you're sitting here watching this, still trying to understand how someone could hurt you so deeply and act like it meant nothing. Maybe you've replayed it 1,000 times, wondering what you did wrong. But what if you didn't do anything wrong? What if the truth is they just didn't know how to hold something that real? See, not everyone is ready for genuine love. Some people crave it but fear it at the same time. They get close enough to feel it, then panic when it asks them to be seen, really seen. And when they run, it's not because you weren't enough. It's because your presence made them confront the parts of themselves they've been running from their whole life. But here's the thing, they'll never tell you. They felt it too. The connection, the pull, the softness, they just couldn't handle it. And the silence that followed wasn't peace, it was consequence. Because love that real doesn't disappear quietly. It lingers, it echoes, it teaches, and maybe you'll never get that apology. Maybe they'll never say, I'm sorry for hurting you. But that's okay, because closure doesn't come from hearing them admit what they did. It comes from realizing that your heart still knows how to love even after being broken. That's strength. That's power. They might have walked away, but they'll remember you. They'll remember how your presence made them feel safe, how your energy calmed their chaos, how you saw them even when they tried to hide. Because people forget faces, they forget words, but they never forget how someone made them feel. And you made them feel something real. So don't regret giving your heart, don't regret caring, because your love wasn't wasted. It was planted, maybe not in them, maybe not in that relationship, but in your own growth. You showed yourself what you're capable of, to love without conditions, to care without fear, to walk away with grace. That's not weakness. That's power disguised as pain. And one day they'll look back and realize what they lost. Not just you, but the version of themselves that only existed when they were with you. The one who felt safe enough to be soft. And when that moment comes, they'll finally understand that they didn't just lose a person, they lost a chance at peace. So if this message touched your heart tonight, share it. Because somewhere out there, someone's still blaming themselves for being too loving, too patient, too kind. But the truth is, the world needs more of that, not less. And if you're that person who loved deeply, who stayed even when it hurt, who gave without being seen, this is your reminder. You didn't lose. You loved in a world that fears love. You cared in a world that hides behind walls. And that makes you rare. Because in the end, it's not about who walked away. It's about who had the courage to stay real.